Picture a riverbank in late autumn. The water moves steadily downstream, following the contours of stone and earth. It does not apologize for its direction. It does not explain itself to the fallen leaves that drift along its surface. The river simply flows where the land allows it to flow, and where the land rises, the water turns. There is no cruelty in this turning. The river is not rejecting the stone. It is simply being water, meeting what is solid, and moving according to its nature. This is the quality we are exploring. The capacity to meet another person's request, another person's need, another person's expectation, and to say, with steadiness and without harshness, this is not my path right now. Many of us were taught that kindness means accommodation. That to be good is to be available. That love is measured by how much we bend, how far we stretch, how often we say yes even when the yes costs us something we cannot afford to give. And so we have learned to override the quiet signals in the body, the tightness in the chest, the small voice that says, I cannot do this. We have learned to treat our own limits as obstacles to virtue, rather than as part of the landscape we must honor if we are to remain whole. But the river does not betray itself by turning. It remains water. It remains true to its nature. And in that truthfulness, it sustains the life along its banks. When we abandon our own boundaries in the name of kindness, we do not become more generous. We become depleted, and from depletion, we cannot offer what is real. Take a moment now to notice your breath, not to change it, just to feel it, the small rise, the small fall. The way the body knows what it needs without asking permission. Saying no is not the opposite of compassion. It is one of compassion's expressions. When we say no with clarity, we are saying yes to something else. Yes to our capacity to show up tomorrow. Yes to the people and commitments we have already chosen. Yes to the truth of this moment, which includes our limits, our energy, our humanness. The boundary is not a wall. It is more like the riverbank. It gives shape to the flow. Without it, the water spreads thin and loses its way. And yet the difficulty is real. Because when we say no, we often feel the other person's disappointment. We feel it in the silence on the phone, in the shift of their expression, in the tightness of their reply. And if we are not careful, we take that disappointment into our body as evidence that we have done harm. We begin to doubt. We begin to revise. We soften the no into a maybe, and the maybe into a yes that we do not mean. But disappointment is not damage. The other person's feeling is real, and it is theirs to hold. Our task is not to prevent every uncomfortable emotion in the people around us. Our task is to meet them with honesty and care, to speak our truth without cruelty, and to trust that they, too, have the capacity to work with what arises. The river does not carry guilt when the stone remains dry. This does not mean we become cold. It does not mean we stop caring. It means we learn to distinguish between kindness and self-abandonment. Kindness can be soft in tone and firm in content. Kindness can say, I care about you, and I cannot do what you are asking. These two things can live in the same breath. Notice now if there is tension in your shoulders, in your jaw. Let the exhale soften what it can. What makes this practice difficult is that we are working against old conditioning. Many of us learned early that our worth was tied to our usefulness. That to be loved, we must be needed. That to be safe, we must not disappoint. And so the boundary feels like a threat. It feels like we are risking the connection. But a connection that requires us to continually override our own truth is not sustainable. It is not built on solid ground. The kindest thing we can offer, in the long run, is our presence as we actually are, not as we think we should be. So we begin here, not with perfection, not with suddenly knowing how to say no without hesitation. We begin with noticing when the yes feels forced, noticing the tightness, noticing the cost. And from that noticing, we practice. We practice saying no in small ways first. We practice feeling the discomfort without collapsing. We practice trusting that we can remain kind and still honor the shape of our own life. The river turns, and it remains the river. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that does not come from effort itself, but from effort given against your own grain. You say yes to something, a request, an invitation, a responsibility, and in that moment of agreement, something in your chest tightens, not the tightness of healthy exertion. Something else, a small closing, a holding back of truth, then you carry it. The obligation sits with you through the days. It takes up space that was meant for other things. And slowly, without quite meaning to, you begin to resent the person who asked, or resent yourself for agreeing, or both. The resentment grows quietly, like a stone gathering moss, until what was offered as help or kindness has become a weight neither of you wanted to carry. This happens not because you are weak or because the other person is demanding. It happens because somewhere between their need and your response, you lost touch with what you actually have to give. Think of a cup filled past the brim. The cup itself is sound, the water is clear, but the moment it overflows, it spills what it was meant to hold. The cup cannot contain what was poured into it, and in trying, it loses even what it could have safely held. This is not a failure of the cup. It is a failure of proportion, of honesty about capacity. Many of us were taught that kindness means saying yes, that to be good, we must be available, that to refuse is to be selfish or unkind. And so we learn to override the small signal that arises in the chest, that quiet no, and replace it with a yes we do not mean. We do this so smoothly that we sometimes do not even notice it happening. But the body notices, the breath notices. There is a particular quality to agreement that comes from genuine willingness, and a different quality to agreement that comes from obligation or fear of disappointing someone. One feels like an opening. The other feels like a closing, even though the words sound the same. The Buddha spoke of something like this. Not directly about saying no, but about something deeper. He said that a wise person is like a solid rock not shaken by the wind, not shaken by praise, not shaken by blame. This does not mean the wise person is unmoved or uncaring. It means they have a center that does not depend on the approval or disapproval of others. They know what they can offer and what they cannot, and they are not moved to abandon that knowledge by the wind of someone else's need or expectation. This is not coldness. It is actually the ground of true kindness. Because when you say yes to something you cannot truly give, you are not being kind. You are being dishonest. You are promising something you will resent delivering. And the other person, whether they know it or not, will feel that resentment. They will sense the obligation beneath the agreement. The gift becomes tainted by what you did not say. Real kindness requires a kind of courage. The courage to be honest about your limits. To say, I cannot do this. Not because you do not care, but because you do. Because you care enough to be truthful rather than simply agreeable. And this is not something you need to figure out in your thinking mind. Your body already knows. Your chest already knows. There is a sensation that arises when you are about to say yes, but mean no. It is subtle, easy to miss if you are not paying attention. But it is there, a slight constriction, a hesitation that comes before the words, a sense of something being held back even as your mouth is opening to agree. If you begin to notice this sensation, not to judge it, not to fight it, but simply to feel it, something shifts. The sensation itself becomes information. It becomes a signal that you are about to pour water into a cup that is already full. That you are about to say yes when your honest answer is no or maybe or not now. You do not need to act on this signal right away. You do not need to suddenly become someone who refuses everything. You can simply notice. Notice the tightness in your chest. Notice the hesitation. Notice the gap between what you are about to say and what you actually mean. Just feel it. Let it be there. Because once you can feel the difference between true willingness and obligated agreement, something becomes possible. You begin to have a choice. Not the choice to become selfish or unkind, but the choice to be honest. To say no when no is true. To say yes only when yes comes from a place that is not contracted with fear or obligation. A cup filled to its proper level can pour freely. It overflows naturally, without strain, without resentment. It gives what it was meant to give, and it remains whole. There is a quiet belief that lives in many of us, so familiar we rarely notice it. It says that if we refuse something, a request, an invitation, a demand on our time, the refusal must be firm, hard, unmistakable, otherwise it will not land. The other person will not hear us. They will push back. They will think we are weak. This belief feels protective. It feels like strength. And so we practice refusals that are sharp, defended, sometimes even angry. We marshal our reasons. We build walls of explanation. We say no so loudly that there is no room for misunderstanding. But notice what happens inside you when you refuse this way. Notice the tension, the bracing, the sense that you must hold your ground against an invisible pressure. There is a kind of brittleness in it, a rigidity. The bamboo in the Zen teaching does not refuse the storm by becoming harder. It bends. It moves with the wind, and because it bends, it does not snap. The flexibility is not a weakness that allows harm. It is the very thing that allows the bamboo to survive intact. This is not a metaphor about giving in. It is about what happens when we stop treating a boundary as a wall that must repel force. A door closes with a soft click, not a slam, and still the room is separate. The separation is complete. The boundary is real. But it does not require violence to establish it. The door does not need to shatter against its frame. The click is quiet, and the room is still private. The person on the other side knows they cannot enter. They know because the door is closed, not because it was slammed in their face. When we refuse without explanation, without justification, without the armor of reasons, something shifts. The refusal becomes cleaner. It becomes kinder. Not because we are being nice to the person asking, but because we are not adding suffering on top of the boundary itself. Think about what happens when someone says no to you with a long explanation. They tell you why they cannot help. They list their reasons. They apologize. They make it about their limitations, their schedule, their capacity. What do? You listen to the reasons. You find the cracks in them. You think of counter-arguments. You feel the door is still open, just difficult. You push a little harder. But when someone says no simply, just no or not right now, or I cannot, there is nowhere to push. The boundary is stated. It is not defended. And because it is not defended, it does not invite attack. This is where compassion enters. We think compassion means saying yes, means explaining ourselves so the other person does not feel rejected, means softening our refusal with apology and justification. But that is not compassion. That is appeasement. And appeasement is not kind to either person. Real compassion means seeing that the other person is asking for something. It means acknowledging that request internally, without judgment. And then it means being clear about what you can and cannot do. The clarity is the kindness, not the explanation, not the softening, the clarity. When you say no without armor, without justification, you are actually trusting the other person. You are trusting them to handle disappointment. You are not assuming they are so fragile that they need you to cushion the refusal with reasons. You are not treating them as if they cannot bear a simple no. There is a practice that can help you feel this. It is small and concrete. Today, say no to something small, something that does not carry enormous weight. A request for your time, a small favor, a suggestion you do not want to follow. Say no in 5 words or fewer. No explanation, no apology, no reasons. I cannot do that. Not today. That does not work for me. I need to say no. Notice what you feel in your body when you do this. There may be discomfort. There may be a small fear that the other person will be upset. That is normal. That is the old belief loosening its grip. But notice also what happens after. The boundary is set. The room is separate. The door has closed with a soft click. And you are still whole. You have not broken. You have not been unkind. The other person may feel disappointed. That is not your responsibility to fix. Disappointment is not harm. It is just the natural feeling that comes when someone cannot give us what we wanted. It passes. It does not require you to undo your boundary. The bamboo does not apologize to the storm for bending. It simply bends. And when the wind passes, it is still standing. This is the practice, not the idea, the practice. 1 small no today. 5 words or fewer. Watch what happens. Feel the difference between a boundary that is defended and a boundary that is simply stated. Feel how a soft click can be stronger than a slam. There is a particular exhaustion that comes not from saying no, but from the way we say it. The apologies that follow, the explanations that stretch on, the sense that our boundary itself requires justification, as if the limit we are setting is a small transgression we must atone for. We sit across from someone, a friend, a family member, a colleague, and they ask something of us. Our body knows the answer already. There is a tightness, a pulling back, a quiet no that forms before any words arrive. And then we speak, but what comes out is rarely the simple truth. Instead, we offer reasons. We build a case. We soften the refusal with so much gentleness that it becomes unclear whether we have actually declined at all. I cannot do this, but here is why. But I wish I could. But perhaps another time. But you understand, don't you? The other person leaves uncertain, and we are left depleted, not because we said no, but because we spent our energy defending the right to say it. There is something to notice here. We are clinging to a view, not the view of the other person, but our own internal view that our boundary is somehow questionable, that it needs to be earned, explained, justified into acceptability. We are treating our limit as if it is an opinion that could be debated rather than a simple fact of our capacity. The wise do not cling to views. They see clearly and let go. This teaching points to something very practical. When we see clearly what we can do and what we cannot, what we have energy for and what we do not, we can let go of the need to convince anyone that this is reasonable. The clarity itself becomes enough. A tree does not apologize for where its roots will not grow. The roots extend into soil they can nourish themselves in. They do not reach into stone and then explain why, as if the stone might feel hurt. The tree simply grows where growth is possible. This is not cruelty. This is not selfishness. This is the tree knowing itself. When we say no without explanation, without the armor of reasons, something shifts. We are no longer defending a position. We are simply stating a boundary the way a tree states its shape. The shape is not up for discussion. It is not harsh. It simply is. But we have been taught, many of us, that kindness means softening every hard edge. That compassion requires us to cushion our refusal with so much padding that the other person barely feels the no at all. We have confused clarity with cruelty. We have confused a clean boundary with an unkind one. There is a different way to understand this. Kindness does not mean making yourself smaller to make room for someone else's request. Compassion does not mean saying yes when the truth is no. In fact, a false yes, a boundary wrapped in so many explanations that it becomes invisible, is a form of unkindness. It leaves the other person confused. It teaches them that they can negotiate with you. It tells them that your limits are flexible if they just push a little harder, ask a little more, or wait a little longer. The clearest kindness is honesty, and the clearest boundary is one that is stated simply, without the architecture of justification around it. This does not mean being abrupt. There is a difference between clarity and harshness. You can decline with gentleness in your voice, with warmth in your presence, and still not offer explanation. You can say no and mean it. You can say no and care about the person at the same time. What happens when we practice this? When we let go of the clinging to the view that our boundary needs defending, there is a moment of discomfort, often. The other person may feel disappointed. They may ask again. They may not understand. And in that moment, the old habit pulls at us: add more words. Explain more. Make them see that it is not personal. Convince them that you are still a good person. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can let the other person's disappointment exist without you trying to fix it, something becomes possible. The boundary becomes real. Not because you have argued for it, but because you have stopped arguing against it. This is where a practice can help. After you have declined something, after you have said no without the cushioning of explanation, sit in silence for 3 breaths. Do not reach for your phone. Do not add more words to soften what you have said. Do not watch the other person's face to see if they are still okay with you. Just sit. Breathe. Feel the shape of the boundary you have just held, the first breath. You notice the impulse to speak, the urge to add something, to make it better, to ensure they still like you. You do not act on it. You breathe. The second breath. There is space now, not comfort necessarily, but space. The boundary is there. It is held. It does not require your constant attention or defense. The third breath, and in this breath, something settles. Not because the other person has agreed with you. Not because they have stopped being disappointed, but because you have stopped clinging to the view that your boundary is negotiable. You have let it be what it is, a simple fact of where your roots can grow and where they cannot. This is what spaciousness feels like. Not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of the struggle against your own limits. The boundary stands, and you stand with it without apology. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from doing things you did not want to do. It settles differently than ordinary tiredness. It carries a small weight of resentment, even when the thing itself was kind, even when you said yes with genuine warmth. Many of us know this feeling well. We say yes to requests we do not have room for. We show up when we are already stretched thin. We offer energy we do not possess. And afterward, we feel something like guilt. Not because we said no, but because we know, quietly, that we should have. There is a fear underneath this pattern. The fear that if we protect our own capacity, if we say no to something, we are being selfish, cold, unkind. We carry an image of compassion as boundless, as always available, as never turning anyone away. To set a limit feels like a betrayal of that image. It feels like we are choosing ourselves over others. But this image itself is worth looking at. Not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. When a lamp burns too brightly, it consumes its oil quickly. The flame flares, intense and brilliant, and then it gutters out. A burned-out lamp serves no one. It cannot illuminate anything. The room it once lit goes dark. This is not a failure of the lamp. It is simply what happens when something gives beyond its capacity. Compassion is not the same as boundlessness. Compassion includes wisdom, the ability to see clearly what you can actually offer and what you cannot. When you are depleted, your presence with others becomes thin. Your listening becomes distracted. Your kindness, even when you offer it, carries an undertone of strain. Others can sense this, whether they name it or not. They receive your yes, but they also receive the cost of it. The teaching that comes through many Buddhist traditions speaks of this directly. To care for others, first tend the lamp within. This is not selfishness. It is the opposite. It is recognizing that your capacity to help, to listen, to show up with genuine warmth, all of this depends on you not running yourself empty. A gardener does not pull weeds from cruelty to the plants. The gardener pulls weeds because they take nutrients from the soil. They shade the flowers. They compete for water. When the gardener removes them, it is not an act of rejection. It is an act of care. The flowers have room to breathe. Their roots have access to what they need. The gardener's work is not divided between the weeds and the flowers. It is focused. It is clear. And because of this clarity, the garden flourishes. When you say no to something, you are doing the same thing. You are not rejecting the person who asked. You are protecting the space where your real yes can live. You are ensuring that when you do show up, you show up whole. This is harder than it sounds, because the fear is real. We worry that no will be heard as coldness. We worry that someone will feel hurt or rejected. We worry that we will be seen as selfish. These worries often come from old places, from messages we received about what it means to be good, to be worthy of love. But they are worth examining because they cost us something real. Notice what happens in your body when you consider saying no to something. There is often a tightening, a small contraction. Sometimes it comes before you have even fully considered whether you want to do the thing. The fear arrives first. The actual decision comes later, if it comes at all. Most of the time, we say yes simply to avoid that moment of discomfort. But discomfort is not the same as harm. And protecting yourself is not the same as harming others. The practice that emerges from this understanding is simple, but it requires a kind of attention that does not come automatically. Each morning, before the day begins, name one thing you will not do today to preserve your capacity for what matters. Not in a spirit of deprivation, not as a punishment or a test of willpower, simply as a clear statement of what you are protecting. This might be a standing commitment you have already made that no longer serves you. It might be a new request that has come in. It might be something more subtle, a pattern of staying late, or saying yes to plans that drain you, or taking on emotional labor that is not yours to carry. The specific thing matters less than the practice itself. When you name it, you are making a choice consciously. You are not drifting into depletion. You are not waiting until you are so exhausted that you snap or withdraw. You are tending the lamp while it still has oil. You are pulling the weeds while the garden still has strength. As you move through the day, you will likely feel that familiar pull. The impulse to override your boundary, to say yes anyway, to prove that you are kind and available and not selfish. Notice this pull without judgment. It is not a sign that you have chosen wrong. It is simply the old fear, still present, still trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. Your boundary is an act of care, not just for you, but for everyone around you. When you protect your capacity, you protect your ability to show up with presence, with genuine warmth, with a lamp that still has light to give. You have said no. The word left your mouth clearly without apology, and for a moment, perhaps just a few seconds, there was relief, a lightness. The thing you did not want to do will not happen. You have protected something, your time, your energy, your truth. Then something else arrives. It is not relief that stays, it is guilt or doubt. A small voice that wonders if you were too harsh, too selfish, too direct. Maybe you should have softened it. Maybe you should have offered an explanation, a reason, a way to make the other person feel better about your no. The discomfort settles in your chest like a weight you did not expect to carry, after doing something you knew was right. This is the peculiar suffering of a boundary well kept. We are told that saying no with kindness will bring us peace, and it does. But not always immediately, not in the way we hope. What arrives instead is the aftermath, the puddles. After rain, water gathers in low places. It sits there, reflecting the sky. We notice it. We might wish it would disappear at once, but it does not. The puddle simply remains present and undeniable until the sun and air do their quiet work. No one has to drain it. No one has to apologize to the earth for the puddle's existence. It is simply there, and then, in its own time, it is not. The guilt you feel after setting a boundary is like this. It is real. It is present. But it is not permanent, even though it feels as though it might be. The Buddha taught that all formations are impermanent. Everything that arises will pass. This is not a comfort that comes from hope or positive thinking. It is an observation, a fact of how experience actually works. The guilt you feel is a formation. It arose. It has a shape, a texture, a weight. And because it arose, it will also fall away. Not because you deserve relief, and not because you have earned peace through suffering. Simply because this is how things are. But we do not usually wait for this. We try to fix it. We reach for justifications. We rehearse explanations in our minds. We imagine calling the person back and softening our answer. We feed the guilt by attending to it, by trying to make it mean something, by treating it as a problem that requires our urgent attention. This feeding is what keeps the puddle from evaporating. When you place your attention on guilt, when you argue with it, when you try to convince yourself that you were right to say no, you are adding water to the puddle. You are keeping it present through your own effort. The discomfort does not pass because you are holding it, turning it over, trying to understand it, trying to make it go away. There is a different way. It is not dramatic. It does not feel like victory. But it works. When the guilt arrives, and it will arrive, you can simply notice it, not as a problem. Not as evidence that you did something wrong. Just as a sensation, a feeling, something that is present right now. You might feel it in your chest, or in your throat, or as a tightness behind your eyes. You might feel it as a thought that loops. I was too harsh. I hurt them. I should have been kinder. This is the moment. This is where the practice lives. Place one hand on your heart, not to fix anything, not to comfort yourself in the way you might comfort a child, simply to acknowledge, Something is here, something is tender. Let your hand rest there, warm and present. Then breathe. Not deep breathing, not breathing with intention. Simply the breath you are already taking. In, out. In, out. The rhythm that continues whether you attend to it or not. As you breathe, the guilt does not necessarily disappear. You do not suddenly feel relieved or justified, but something shifts. The guilt becomes less like a problem you must solve and more like a weather pattern passing through. You are not trying to make it go away. You are simply present with it, your hand on your heart, your breath moving until it softens on its own. This is not resignation. It is not acceptance in the sense of giving up. It is the recognition that the puddle will evaporate without your interference. That discomfort, when not fed, naturally diminishes. That guilt, when not rehearsed and justified and argued with, gradually loses its grip. The boundary you set was necessary. The no you spoke was true. And the discomfort that followed is also true, also real, also temporary. All of these things can exist at once. You do not have to choose between being right and being kind. You do not have to resolve the guilt immediately to prove that you made the correct choice. You can simply rest in the aftermath. Your hand on your heart, your breath moving, the puddle present, evaporating in its own time. This is what it means to say no with compassion. Not just toward the other person, but toward yourself. Toward the part of you that feels the weight of that boundary and wonders if it was too much. You do not have to fix that wondering. You do not have to make it mean anything. You can let it be what it is, a formation, arising and passing, like all things. The boundary you set today may feel small. A quiet no. A pause before answering. A choice to let someone's urgency remain theirs alone. But small gestures like these are not minor. They are the soil in which something deeper takes root. When you say no with kindness, you are not turning away from the world. You are turning toward it with honesty. You are saying, I see you, and I also see what I can hold. Both matter, both are real. This is not coldness, it is clarity. And clarity, when it is kind, becomes a form of care. There will be moments when your no is met with disappointment, perhaps even anger. Someone may not understand. They may feel hurt or push back or grow silent in a way that unsettles you. And in those moments, you may wonder if you were wrong, if you should have bent, if kindness means always yielding. But kindness does not require you to abandon yourself. It asks only that you remain present, that you speak truthfully, that you do not harden your heart, even when the response is difficult. You can hold your boundary and still wish someone well. You can say no and still feel compassion. These are not opposites. They are companions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to let someone experience their own disappointment. To trust that they, too, can meet what arises. To resist the urge to fix, to soothe, to take responsibility for feelings that are not yours to carry. This is not indifference. It is respect. It is the quiet belief that others are capable of their own unfolding. And when you offer that respect to them, you also offer it to yourself. There is a kind of metta that includes boundaries, a loving kindness that does not collapse under pressure. It is warm, but it is not boundless in the way we sometimes imagine. It has edges. It knows its own shape, and because of that, it can sustain itself. When you practice saying no with kindness, you are practicing this form of metta. You are learning to hold care without losing your center, to be generous without becoming depleted, to love in a way that includes your own presence. This is not easy. It asks you to tolerate discomfort, to sit with the tension of wanting to please and knowing you cannot. to feel the pull of old patterns and choose differently anyway. But each time you do, something shifts. The grip loosens. The fear softens. The belief that your worth depends on constant giving begins to fade, and in its place, something quieter emerges. A steadiness, a trust in your own discernment, a sense that you can meet the world without losing yourself in it. This is freedom, not the loud, triumphant kind, the gentle kind, the kind that lets you rest. So as you move forward from here, carry this with you. Your no is not a rejection. It is an acknowledgement of what is true, and when it is spoken with care, it becomes an act of integrity. May you find ease in your boundaries. May you trust your own knowing. May you offer kindness to yourself as readily as you offer it to others. May the people in your life learn to meet you where you are, and may you learn to meet yourself there too. May you release the belief that love requires self-erasure. May you know that your presence, honest and whole, is enough. And may all beings find the balance between giving and receiving. May all beings know when to open and when to close. May all beings rest in the truth of their own limits, without shame, without fear. May you be safe. May you be held. May you be free. If this practice has touched something in you, there are other explorations waiting, other threads to follow. But there is no rush. Let this settle first. Let it become part of how you move through the world. And when you are ready, we will be here,